Hey guys, welcome to Lowbro Show. Happy New Year. I am recovering from a Dayquil hangover and so many other things. And I'm here with John.
Hello. It's been a year.
It has. Channel's not quite dead, but it's been a long time. And we wanted to talk about our favorite movies of the year.
Yeah, we're going to do the same
Yeah.
as last year. Our five favorites, and they're not going to intersect.
So let's talk a little bit about what's shaping our list. For myself, I have what you might consider somewhat basic movie tastes. Like, I appreciate good Oscar winning dramas, but at the same time, I also really crave some of those just blockbuster movies. Now, John, I know you have a very different taste and a very different movie watching habits.
Yeah, so I'm just opening my Letterboxd app to track how many movies I've seen. I have seen, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but 80 plus 2018 releases.
That's
Um
a
some
lot.
of them I've seen since the new year, but I count them as 2018 movies because they were released in 2018. And I also live in Manhattan, so a lot of movies that don't really get wide release across the country, I prioritize. And I actually prioritize seeing them early so that I can see them with a fresh and untainted opinion of them.
And have you noticed maybe a theme in your top five? Because I actually have one that was kind of accidental.
Yeah, becoming who you are, what your relationship to the world because of who you are or who you're trying to be, who you're trying to hide.
So for me, an overriding theme over the whole list is stories about who gets to be a hero.
Hmm.
I have a lot of movies in my top five about unlikely heroes, about uh, marginalized people, and saw a lot more diversity this year. All
It
right.
was definitely, I mean, the last few years have been this way as well, but definitely a landmark year for diversity in film.
Yeah. And it really shows in my top five.
That's
All right.
exciting.
It really is. It makes me excited.
Okay, my number five favorite movie of this year is The Favorite, directed
Mm.
by Yorgos Lanthimos. I am a big fan of another Yorgos Lanthimos film called The Lobster. He wrote and directed that movie. I think it came out 3 or 4 years ago. Um, I think this movie is a lot more accessible, as many have seen with the trailer, because it has a very specific period it communicates through its set and costumes. Um, but this is still very much a typical Yorgos Lanthimos film, I would say. It's also more accessible because of the casting, particularly because of Emma Stone. Um, but to fill you in, his style is very dry, almost dry to the point of confusion. I think certain audiences might even have difficulty knowing whether they're supposed to laugh or not because it is so dry. It is not set in reality. It is absurd, um, and it's hilarious. But he explores big ideas, and I what I really love about The Favorite is it is absolutely hysterical, and it takes a time period that's all about propriety and does everything it can to turn that on its head. So you have these men wearing these wigs that probably weigh as much as they do, doing the most ridiculous dancing you could possibly imagine that does not fit with the time period at all. You have women behaving in ways that you know for certain they were not allowed to behave, all while doing it in this deadpan comedy style, which was absolutely hilarious. And it also is the trio of lead female performances in this movie are just amazing. It's some of the most committed work I've seen this year. Olivia Colman, Rachel Weisz, and Emma Stone are all equally wonderful, and it was just a joy to watch them fight with each other for dominion. And I found it to be perfectly delightful hilarious and also very thought-provoking in the way that it approached this idea of royalty and who gets to be in charge and the mental implications of being responsible for someone else.
Did you just look at me? Did you? Look at me! Look at me! How dare you! Close your eyes!
Oh, I have to add one more thing about The Favorite.
Yeah.
This movie has, I think if you follow me on social media, you'll see that I've said this, but this has two reasons to see this movie. It has the best performance by a duck in any movie this year, and Rachel Weisz in Breaches shooting a gun. If that doesn't get you into the theater, then I don't know.
I am all about favorite ducks in movies and waterfowl in general.
Yeah, I actually have a list of my favorite animal performances in movies in the Letterboxd app going. Maybe another video for another time.
I think that would be awesome. You should do it. All right. My number 5 movie of the year is Black Panther, directed by Ryan Coogler. It was a cultural phenomenon, big thing on Twitter, so many memes, so much discussion. You don't need me to really talk too much about it, but I want to say, like, it was really impressive to see a movie with so much black excellence on screen. So many amazing actors portraying so many different types of characters. The villain is right, but his methods are wrong, and the hero is noble, but he's defending a corrupt system, with lots of themes and discussions that were much more complex than you'd expect in a Marvel movie. This was a real breath of fresh air. It might have been even higher for me if Act 3's CGI and action had held up a little bit stronger. But as it is, I don't think there's been a line in any movie I've seen this year that has stuck with me more. Bury me in the ocean with my ancestors who jumped from the ships because they knew death was better than bondage. Amazing line.
Yeah.
And it made me realize there's a lot of different... You see movies for a lot of different reasons, but one of the biggest ones is fantasy escapism. The idea of T'Challa flying into Oakland and just saving the whole community is a powerful one.
My number 4 is 8th Grade, which is written and directed by stand-up comedian and Vine and YouTube celebrity Bo Burnham. It's really remarkable to me that a man, I believe he's my age, he's late 20s, was able to conceive of this story about a 13-year-old girl and make it so accurate and so convincing. So many of my female friends that I recommended this movie to have told me it's their favorite thing they saw this year because it just felt like watching themselves on screen. A review I read of this had a line that I really liked where he actually compared it to a horror movie. There are a lot of shots in this movie where the character is entering a scenario that is so familiar and so universal to an American teenager, but the way that it's shot it gives it so much mystery and ambiguity. So we know what the character is walking into, but she has no idea what's coming. Namely, there's this scene in a pool party where she walks out in this bright green one piece, and the camera just shows her back from the shoulders to mid back, and it's the anxiety of that moment is just terrifying. It's also hilarious. It's just a really comfortable way to see some of the most awkward moments that a adolescent goes through in middle America. And I think Elsie Fisher's performance in this is honestly transcendent. There's a lot of improv that she's doing. She's filling a lot of empty dialogue space with ums without making it seem excessive, and it seems completely natural. I also think her dad, played by Josh Hamilton, gives one of the most underrated supporting performances of the year. There's a scene between him and his daughter that is maybe one of my favorite of the year. I can still recall exactly how I felt and where I was sitting in the movie theater when it happened. I think it's a very universal movie for anyone that went to junior high school or middle school in the United States. Yeah, that's my number 4.
The topic of today's video is being yourself. Being yourself can be hard, and it's like, aren't I always being myself? And yeah, for sure. But being yourself is like not changing yourself to impress someone else.
All right. Okay. My number 4 pick is Won't You Be My Neighbor, directed by Morgan Neville. Fred Rogers is not a traditional hero. He is a very skinny, older man. I watched it on a plane, and I think I cried many times watching the film, probably about 4 or 5. And every single time you watch him interact with the child, you realize, like, he's not even saying anything that profound, but the way he says it with so much earnestness and sincerity, it's you realize that that child's probably never had someone speak to them in that way before from an adult, and it's something really special. You watch the way he defends the message of his show, which is everyone deserves to be loved, and just how much that is still needed today. It was something that really stuck with me, and I hope that it will stick with me for a while, because honestly, I felt like I was watching a way to be a better person and a better father while watching this documentary. I have a strong recommendation for Won't You Be My Neighbor.
I agree. It was I think it's kind of hard to, as long as you're doing your job, it's hard to make a bad documentary about such a perfect person.
I think my favorite bit was actually Officer Clemens singing There Are Many Ways to Say I Love You.
My favorite scene was when he was singing the song It's You I Like.
It's you. It's you. I like.
And it is you I like, Jeff.
Thanks.
And there must be times when you do feel blue.
Uh-huh.
I'm not feeling blue right now, though.
Me neither.
Again, plugging the Letterboxd app here, I logged every single movie I saw as soon as I walked out of it in the movie theater, and had a list with rankings going all year long. And these top 3 spots, all 3 of these movies have occupied all 3 of these spaces. So this is where they've landed, but 5 years from now, there might be one that I am like, oh no, this was definitely my favorite. I honestly don't know. I love all 3 of these movies so much. And also, I see top 5 out of 80 plus is just absolutely exceptional for me as well. Anyway, okay, so number 3 is Shoplifters, or Manbiki Kazoku, written and directed by Hirokazu Koreeda. So Shoplifters won the Palme d'Or. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that is the highest award that you can win at the Cannes Film Festival. I've seen a couple other of Koreeda's films before, and he has this very naturalistic slice of life style. And the couple other films of his I have seen were unbearably sad. I'm not saying that Shoplifters is not a sad movie, but it is, for a large portion of the movie, extremely light. Even though there is dark subject matter kind of hiding in the corners, it is extremely light, extremely fun to see. The dynamics of this quote-unquote family are, in and of themselves, so deep and so convincing that I actually had the thought during the middle of the movie that I just wanted to crawl into the screen and live in it, because it was so much fun. I also think this is the strongest acting ensemble of the year. This family of 6 people, all 6 characters are very fully developed, and all 6 actors are just wonderful. That said, this movie, though it has so much levity, does take quite a turn at a certain point in the movie and is quite devastating. Sakura Ando, who I suppose is the light lead female performance, I think very easily gives the best performance in a movie this year, in any movie I've seen. There are 2 scenes in particular that I will never forget. I don't want to spoil the context of either scene at all, but one is in this breakneck close, just such a long close-up angle that has her looking right down the barrel of the camera, and it's such the way that she tries to hide her shame and ultimately can't is so heartbreaking. I'm getting emotional talking about it, but if the Academy was just, Sakura Ando would easily be nominated for an Academy Award this year. But all the other performances in this movie are great. There's 2 very young child actors who give extremely naturalistic performances that make you immediately so concerned about them. I saw this movie with a friend of mine who had never seen a Japanese movie, and she said it was one of her favorite movies of all time. I think it's extremely accessible, and if foreign language films aren't your thing, I think this is a great one to start with.
子供にはね、母親が必要なんですよ。
母親がそう思いたいだけでしょ。産んだらみんな母親になんの？
My number 3 film is Black Klansman, directed by Spike Lee. Basically, Black Klansman tells a loosely adapted, kind of true, but, lots of liberties taken with story of Colorado Police Department's first black officer who joins the Klan and develops a over-the-phone relationship with David Duke. And there's a couple of scenes that really stick out to me in particular. The lead and his romantic partner, Ron and Patrice, are discussing favorite blaxploitation movies, and at one point Patrice says, "This is a harmful movie. It doesn't do good things for us. It perpetuates negative stereotypes." And Ron says, "What do you care? Do you have to always think about politics? It's just a movie." But that's a recurring theme throughout this movie, is how it's never just a movie. It opens with footage from Gone with the Wind, a movie that kind of lionizes the South. In Act 3, the Klan watches Birth of a Nation, a movie that lionizes the Klan. In a lot of ways, the movie kind of grapples with the way movies have the power to perpetuate very harmful messages. And at the end of the day, it's also a movie about whether you can bring about changes for good by being a part of a corrupt system, or whether that's impossible, and never really gives us a solid answer, but it shows that it's questions that are still needed today.
Yeah, I like that there's a lot of controversy this year about movies, well, in every year, but especially because there's a certain movie that takes place in the 1960s about race relations, and there's just movies that deal with race that take place that long ago are just under a lot of scrutiny right now. And I think what Spike Lee really got right with Black Klansman was he, at the beginning, basically tells you, like, I've taken liberties with this. I'm using this outline of a true event to show you why it's relevant today, instead of just saying, at least it's not as bad now as it used to be, which can very much be a problematic message, even though it can be a really comforting thing to watch on screen. Also, the way that John David Washington just emerges in that movie like, I don't think a lot of people are talking about it, but he could very well be Oscar nominated for that movie. I'm kind of annoyed that he's as talented as he is, because do you know who his father is?
No.
His father is Denzel Washington.
Oh, geez.
So he probably didn't have a lot of difficulty breaking into the industry, but he's pretty... I thought he was fantastic in that movie.
Real payoffs at the end, going from really funny to like deathly serious in a way that actually works. It's pretty great.
What can I do you for?
Well, since you asked, I hate blacks. I hate Jews, Mexicans, and Irish, Italians, and Chinese. But my mouth to God's ears, I really hate those black rats. And anyone else, really, that doesn't have pure white Aryan blood running through their veins.
I'm happy to be talking to a true white American.
God bless white America.
My number 2 of the year. Oh, it feels almost like an insult to give this movie a number 2. Is Roma. Written and directed by Alfonso Cuarón, it is semi-autobiographical in that it is based on his childhood, and it is available to stream on Netflix.
So no excuses on this one.
Yes. I actually was listening to a podcast with Cuarón today, and he talked a lot about how there's a lot of criticism for him platforming with Netflix, especially when he himself very much values the cinematic experience. And I do have to say, and the way that he programmed his deal with Netflix was the movie had to be released, I think, for a month in theaters before it was platformed. And actually what Cuarón said is that with this deal with Netflix, he actually got a wider release in theaters than he would have through any other company, because this is a foreign language film in black and white, which is a huge hurdle to cross commercially. And so if anything, Netflix actually really helped him to get into movie theaters. So I was privileged enough to see this movie in a movie theater, and I must say, whatever you can do to create a movie theater environment wherever you stream Netflix, please do it. If you have access to surround sound, you must, because the sound design in this movie is absolutely superlative. People were turning around in the movie theater because they thought someone was talking, but that wasn't the case. It was just in the movie, someone in another room was talking, and it was the sound design reflected that, so it sounded like it was coming from behind you, which was just incredible. That's what's most impressive about this movie, is every single department feels superlative. The cinematography is just breathtaking. The way that the house is designed, it feels so lived in and so many details. Every prop tells a story. Yalitza Aparicio, who plays the lead role, had never acted before, but the way that Cuarón coaxes such a layered performance out of her is just masterful. And actually, the way that he did it is not revealing the script to her, but giving her instructions day by day, which I think is just a incredible accomplishment as a director. It does require a lot of you. It is indeed in Spanish. It is in black and white. It is a very, very slice of life movie. The narrative is a little bit abstract. You kind of have to really do a lot of work in your mind to put the pieces together to find out where the story is going. But ultimately, I found it extremely effective emotionally. I, at one point, just didn't know if I would ever stop crying. I cried throughout an entire scene, and then almost cried for the 20 minutes remaining in the movie. It is an absolute masterpiece. It will likely be the movie that Alfonso Cuarón is remembered for the rest of his career. And it's wonderful that it's accessible to the entire world on Netflix.
Yeah, no excuses. Gotta check it out on Netflix.
Yeah, there's no excuse, guys.
My number 2 pick is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Oh man, Disney's looking like a bunch of fools for firing them from the Solo movie right now. I recently had a conversation recommending this movie with a few people, and they were like, but it's a PG animated movie, and I could feel my whole body tensing up as I was like, as I was narrowing my eyes and I just want to scream. Spider-Man is probably the most tread over hero of the 21st century.
Absolutely.
We've had 3 live-action Spider-Mans and half a dozen movies, appearances, and several more. This movie turns everything on its head by just saying, like, well, what if we did Spider-Man, but completely different? Don't sleep on this movie. This one might be the best Spider-Man movie of all time. It's easily a top 5 comic book movie of all time. Alright, well, new outfit. Had some technical difficulties. My camera cut out, so I'm going to have to record the rest of this and insert it on my own. So, to get back to what I was saying about Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse is the story about how Miles Morales becomes Spider-Man. And there's a scene that's an equivalent to Wonder Woman going through No Man's Land or Donnie Creed running through the streets of Philadelphia being chased by motorcycles, that is on that same level of filmmaking in how expertly done it is. Every single part of it lines up and it hits you so perfectly. There's so many amazing things about this movie. So there's a new cast of villains with a mix of some that have never made it on the big screen before and others that have been completely remixed and done in new and exciting ways. Then there's all the Spider people. All of them are radically different, have their own origin stories, and are really fun to watch. And the movie goes and hits you with some great emotional scenes. One of the biggest emotional scenes for me, believe it or not, was Stan Lee's cameo. And not just because he had recently passed away, it's because it was actually put into the movie in a way that mattered and was important to the story, and that's incredible. So, huge recommendation for Into the Spider-Verse. Definitely go see it.
My name is Peter Parker. I'm pretty sure you know the rest. I saved the city, fell in love, then I saved the city again and again and again. Look, I'm a comic book, a cereal, I did a Christmas album, and a so-so popsicle. But this isn't about me. Not anymore.
So, I saw a lot of movies this year. It was really difficult for me to narrow it down to 5. So here are just a few movies that I at one point thought I would include but didn't. These are a few of my honorable mentions.
There was nothing that could keep us apart.
They're trying to conceal what they did from the people they did it to.
When you play with humans, you do something very wrong.
Who would be evil enough to come up with something like this? It's a mystery. I'd like to know the truth.
Paddington looks for the good in all of us, and somehow he finds it.
If we're kind and polite, the world will be right.
Oh, dear.
بس يعرفوا انه عندك ولد الا يطيروكي.
طيب واطلع لك جنبي.
عارف ليش انت هون؟
بدي اشتكي على اهلي.
ليه؟
هم خلفوني.
나 모르겠어? 우리 어릴 때 같은 동네 살았잖아.
희열을 느끼는 거죠. 여기서 베이스가 느껴져요. 뼛속까지 울리는 베이스. 들판에 버려진 낡은 비닐하우스 하나를 골라 태우는 거예요. 마치 처음부터 존재하지 않았던 것처럼. 거기에 옳고 그런 건 없어요. 자연의 도덕만 있지.
You're a good girl, and I'm proud of you. Don't you ever forget it.
And who's gonna be responsible for this baby?
The father and the mother.
I wanna hold you in my arms. I gotta hold our baby in my arms.
We'll find a way.
We've known Ani all his life. He's about to pay for something he didn't do.
These are our children, and we gotta set them free.
And if you trusted love this far, don't panic now. Trust it all the way.
My number one movie of the year I saw this summer in a movie theater that has a screen that has just 2 rows of seats. And the 2 rows of seats were completely sold out. I was alone. The next youngest person in the movie theater, I believe, was about 50 years older than me. And at one point, I nearly just rolled over onto my stomach because I was so embarrassed by how emotionally affected I was by this movie. But anyway, the movie is called The Rider. It is written and directed by Chloe Zhao. It is based on a true story, and there are no quote-unquote professional actors in this movie. In fact, all of the characters in this movie are playing versions of themselves. Their names are changed, but all of the major events that happened to these characters actually happened in their lives. There's some added flair for dramatic purposes, but what this movie is about, the themes are real things that happen to real people. If you were to pitch that idea to me, I would tell you it sounds like a recipe for disaster. A Chinese director who is recently out of film school was able to travel to the Badlands in South Dakota, find a rodeo rider on a Lakota reservation, and say, your life has to be a movie and you have to be in it. And for her to recreate this story with so much authenticity is, to me, the accomplishment of the year. There are many scenes in this movie where there is no dialogue. We're just watching Brady, the protagonist, accomplish a task. There's this scene, this long scene where Brady trains a horse. And I've always had respect for horses. I've ridden horses in mostly group situations. Never really, I don't have any experience training them. I've been on them a couple times, but I didn't realize just how much of an endeavor it is to break a horse. And in these scenes where Brady is training the horses, I feel like it's like watching Jesus walk on water. What he is accomplishing is superhuman. It is spiritual. And what's so amazing is that the performance you're seeing on screen is actually happening. There is no way there can be a double doing what he's doing. The emotions that these characters are going through on screen feels so authentic because these are things that they've actually lived through. There are moments with Brady and his sister that are just astonishingly poignant. There are moments with Brady and one of his disabled rodeo friends that are just unforgettable to me. This movie really surprised me. I think I went in strictly because it had received great reviews. It didn't at all appeal to me. This poster was a boy with a cowboy hat. Looked like it was about horses, but I decided to trust my reviews, and I think because it surprised me in such a big way, it really, really resonated with me. It really deals with this idea of how do you define yourself when the thing you've defined yourself as for your entire life is no longer an option. And that is such a universal message. And it's amazing to me that Chloe Zhao was able to tell that story and portray that message through tiny, tiny little family she found in South Dakota.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Oh, boy. Hey, no. Sorry, I was too tight on you there. Just gotta let you trust me. Gotta quit trying to force you. Just trust me, bro.
Top 5 lists are deeply personal. My number 1 movie this year could very well change in a month. It's really almost a dead heat between my top 3, and I know it's the same way for John. So in the end, I decided to give my number 1 slot to the movie that I felt was the most creative and original, and the one that needed to be talked about more. And that is Searching. So, Searching stars John Cho. You may know him from Star Trek. And it's the story of how his daughter goes missing, and he needs to find her. And as he's working with detectives trying to find her, he discovers that her online life isn't exactly what he thought it was. The story is told entirely through screens, in the same way Unfriended was. So, all you're looking at is MacBooks and iPhones. About a minute in, I was like, oh no. I hope this gimmick doesn't get old and I get really bored. And then 3 minutes in, I'm already starting to cry. And 30 minutes in, I'm on the edge of my seat. And when the movie's wrapping up, I am elated. It's insane to me how innovative this movie is. For decades, filmmakers have struggled with how to make people working at a computer look interesting. They've tried a lot of gimmicks, and this one just puts them all to shame by putting the entire movie on a computer and making it interesting and engaging 100% of the time. It's because the movie's all done through like webcams and FaceTime cameras. John Cho also needs to get a lot of credit for his acting performance.
I think that John Cho performance is a lot more difficult than it looks. Because I think there's a lot of technical, like where he stands, where his head is, where his hands are, all of those things are so important.
For example, just to use a lot in camera result here, he'll be sitting like this and be doing like a medium shot, and then something serious goes on and he gets closer to the camera and acting like his own, the cameraman getting his own close-up, making the whole scene more intense, which is like pretty clever. Another reason I'm sticking this movie at my number 1 spot is that it's also incredibly accessible. I will say not everyone is going to enjoy BlacKkKlansman, and I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. But Searching is a movie I feel very confident in recommending to everyone. At its core, it's a very standard mystery thriller told in a very new and exciting way, and it doesn't hurt that that mystery thriller is very competently executed with tons of twists and turns that you don't see coming, and also that it's surprisingly heartfelt and emotional, and that it also has characters that you really care for at its core. So, for those reasons, that is why Searching is my number 1 movie of the year.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that movie too. I remember hearing a lot of the gasps in the movie theater. I saw Crazy Rich Asians, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, and Searching within the span of 7 days. In those 7 days, I saw more Asians on screen in American feature films than I had seen in my entire life. So going back to kind of what we were saying at the beginning, this was a landmark year, another landmark year for representation in film, but for obvious reasons, a very important one and significant one for us.
I know my daughter. This is your keychain.
She was my best friend. You broke his jaw!
I know my daughter.
I'm trying to help you find my daughter!
I didn't know her. I didn't know my daughter.
So anyway, that's our recommendations. Let us know what you think. Talk to us if you have any stuff you'd like us to talk about or want to know our opinions on things. We're always down for making videos. You can find me at JacobYLow, and you can find John at John_Low. If you like the video, give us a like, comment, or a subscribe. It lets us know that you like what we're doing, and we run on validation.